like to let you know some upcoming events. Next month, Brigade will be celebrating their 6th birthday. And so on the 21st of July, we will be having our birthday party along with our nation's 250th birthday party. And it will be at the Knights of Columbus, and everyone is invited. It will be open to the public. And the Brigade members will be providing food and drinks. And then in August the 8th, we will have George McCurry from the Attorney General's office here at the Carver Center, and he will be talking about fraud. So if what's been going on in our community, because you hear it on the radio and see it on sign and post all the time, make sure you attend that meeting in August. And that one will be here, and our birthday party will be at the Knights of Columbus. And at the end of the meeting, if any of those of you that can, help us pick up our table and chairs and put them back, and we would appreciate that. And then from now, I'll let Chad take over.
We're going to start off with our representatives and everybody up here at the front. There will be another one coming in just a moment. Scott Hill is on his way. But we wanted to get an update from you guys as to what is going on in our state, what has happened recently. And you'll obviously have more time to talk later about your campaign and so forth. But we appreciate you guys representing us. And if possible, I'd like to start with Clark Sanders right here. Give us an update, Clark, and thank you for being here.
All right, thanks very much, Chad. So the first thing I want to do is give a great shout out to Evergy. They did a wonderful job of keeping us informed, all of us informed as to how the progress was. And just kind of an FYI, if there's ever a power outage, maybe I should not say if, when there's the next power outage, you can call any one of us and we'll probably have the latest information. But they did a great job. It was a massive power outage. At one point, everybody in the city of Salina was without power. And the fact that they were able to get the power restored as quickly as they did, although if you were without power for 4 days, you probably didn't feel like it was very quick. But they really did yeoman's work to get it going. So that they did a great job, and they also did a great job of keeping us in the loop as to what was going on. So this is going to be an interesting election year, as it always is. Now, the senators are not up for election, with the exception here of Scott, who is actually running. He's at this point filling a seat that was vacant, and now he's got to run for election to that seat, and then he's going to have to run again in 2 years on the regular cycle when all the reps and the senators run. But for the three of us, we all have races. Now, I'm fortunate this time in that I don't have a primary opponent, but I do have a couple of ladies that are running in the general election on a Democrat primary. Their names are Miranda Bachman and Megan Rico. What's interesting about Miranda Bachman is I was in a couple of parades 2 years ago, and I rode in the back of a convertible, and the guy who drove me in those parades is Miranda Bachman's dad. So when she decided to run and filed, I texted him and I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to get another driver this time. And he said, yeah, that would probably be best. And what's interesting is he's a pretty conservative guy. I can assure you the other two are not. So, but that's, that's fine. I just don't feel like they generally represent our values. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And of course, the other thing that I want to stress is we've got the judicial election coming up. I don't know if it strikes anybody but me as kind of the height of hypocrisy, but the real Kansas, real voter folks want you to vote no on this. So in other words, we're voting whether or not we should get a vote, we the people should get a vote to elect Supreme Court justices. Real Kansas, real voters say, no, vote no to that. So I guess they want to be real voters when it suits their purposes. Otherwise, they don't want to be real voters. So that's very odd. The thing that you need to know about that is if it passes, it's nowhere near done. So first of all, I'll talk about if it doesn't pass, which I hope is not the case. I hope it does pass. But if it doesn't pass, then that's the end of it. If it does pass, then the legislature will have some decisions to make. And among those decisions will be, so will we elect all 7 of them at once, which will probably not be the case, or will we phase it in, 4 in one election and 3 in the next election 2 years later, or would it be 2, 2, and 3, or 3, 2, and 2? How would that, go? And then would the people be elected at large, meaning everybody would vote in every time there was a judicial election, or would they be elected by districts? And I would prefer a district methodology. So, but that's, until we get this voted in, it doesn't matter what I prefer or any of us up here prefer, because until it gets voted in, then it isn't going to matter. But I would encourage your yes vote on that, and that is coming up. That's part of the August 4th primary. So please consider that.
Thank you, Clark. I forgot to tell our timer about 5, 6 minutes for each of these to start off with. That way she can remind you when time is running out. We'll go to Representative Powell next. And if you would, guys, this is more of an update about what has taken place over your time, and tell us what you've been involved in. I know Representative Hill, or Senator Hill, I'm sorry, came in a little bit later. But if you could tell us a little bit about what's going on, we'll give you opportunity about your campaign and that a little bit later in the evening. But Stephen Howe, please.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate the Brigade and everybody that came out this evening. Great turnout. It's been a pleasure to serve as a state representative for the 71st District of Kansas, the last 6 sessions. This session was unlike any other that I've experienced in my short time in office. It was an aggressive pace, passing a lot of bills in a short amount of time, and we had a lot of significant bills come before us. I think in one 3-day period, we had over 100 bills that we had to vote on. And that is very stressful, and it's a strain on many of the legislators and staff that have to write and modify those bills with amendments and things. So I hope in the future that the legislature will hopefully do fewer bills, but do a really good job in focusing on some key issues that are before our state. Some of the things that came up this session was property tax proposals to provide some property tax relief to people across Kansas. There's an increase, or I should say a disproportionate burden being placed on residential homeowners, property owners, and we couldn't come up with the perfect bill that would get 2/3 majority. You see, the last 6 years I've served, we've had a Democrat governor, and oftentimes we have to get 2/3 majority to get a significant bill across the line. But I will also say during those 6 years, Governor Kelly she's vetoed the most bills in Kansas history. And we've also overrode more bills in modern history in the Kansas legislature. We took up measures about combating waste and fraud in our safety net programs. We have food benefits, school lunches, all sorts of things that are out there that we're trying to get more in line with the federal government on, giving them the tools to make sure that your tax dollars are being used wisely. We also had a parole board reform bill. It came up after a man that was convicted of murdering a 26-year-old Kansas Highway Patrol trooper, Conroy O'Brien. And you should have seen how much pushback there was on that. And so we brought some needed reforms to that process for the parole board. Also measures to stop repeat offenders. There was a tragic death of a KU student who was struck and killed by a driver with 4 previous DUI convictions. So we moved forward with reforms to stop the repeat offenders and increase transparency in our judicial system. We also enacted a HALO law to protect first responders and law enforcement. So if someone's disrupting a law enforcement scene, the first responder or law enforcement has the right under state law to tell them to get back at a healthy distance of 25 feet. If they fail to comply, then they are violating state law. That'll take place on July 1st. There's a lot of other things that we did to protect our kids from screens and smartphones. We're trying to get some of that technology out of the classroom environment. Unfortunately, a few years back, the State Board of Education did a study about the pitfalls of having cell phones in schools. And they came up with basically not a policy, that they just left it up to the local school boards to take the recommendations or not. But I think there needed to be something consistent statewide that everybody understood. And so that's when the legislature stepped in to pass that. I think maybe the first school year is going to be a little rough, but we'll get through it. You know, even though we reduced spending in this year's budget, we're still deficit spending $400 million. And we're going to exhaust our state reserves if we don't get a little bit more aggressive on that. So I look forward to working on those key issues in the future. And I'll stop there and pass it on down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Powell. Representative Wolf, and thank you for staying within the time limit. That was tremendous. Unexpected, but tremendous.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for having us all come. We do appreciate that we are able to be here. He was talking about Evergy, and I just want to really quickly, because I got this from Evergy today, I had a really amazing guy from Minneapolis that has been with Evergy forever that kept me in the loop, and if I had constituents saying things to me about not having power, I could talk to him and he'd check on it and he would get tickets written. So I was really able to help a lot of my constituents because of that. And so I'm going to read this real quick. On the evening of June 8th, storms progressed eastward slowly overnight along I-70 and resulted in significant outages across our service area. The most extreme damage was in Salina, where the entire city was without power for a period overnight. Of the course of the storm, we restored over 46,000 customers in the Salina area. In storms of this magnitude, we have instances where the same customers may lose power more than once. Winds up to 150 miles per hour caused extensive damage to the power grid, including snap poles and down power lines. On Wednesday evening, another wave of storms moved through the area. Fortunately, the system was weaker, but it interrupted power restoration and caused some new outages. Over the week, crews had to rebuild large sections of the local power grid, replacing 500 poles, both wood and steel, 100 transformers. Those are huge. My husband used to mow and he used to have for them, and he used to have $2 million in liability insurance just to be able to mow around those. So that's a huge, huge loss for them. 30 miles of power line cable, Evergy crews and contractors from Missouri and areas of Kansas, including 700 line workers, were deployed to restore power in Salina, working around the clock until all customers were restored. The majority of the hotels in Salina were without power, so crews stayed in McPherson or Wichita during their breaks. Those based in nearby communities traveled back and forth from their homes. So that just kind of tells you. They did tell me when they first called me that it's bigger than if they had a tornado, because a tornado just takes a path and wipes things out. This was just widespread everywhere. So we all lived through it, thank God. We did, and no lives were lost, but it was a big deal. So we're so thankful that we have people willing to go in and work on that. So this is my second full year, and like they've said, it was crazy. I mean, I thought being brand new the first year was crazy, but they pushed it up a notch. We worked our tails off. I mean, I was usually at the Capitol before 7, and I usually didn't leave until 6 or 7. I have a tax committee that sometimes would go until 7 at night. So every day I had tax, every day I had education, so my afternoons were totally booked. And then every other day I had local government. So let's talk about tax. That one is really, really difficult. If it wasn't, we'd already have it fixed, wouldn't we? So every time we think we'd come up with a solution for something, then it would get, no, this doesn't work. And having been a county commissioner for 6 years, I'm gonna tell you, if we do too much, then we step on their ability to get the things that you need, like ambulance, maintaining your cemeteries, police patrol, district courts. I've written some of these down because I knew I'd get up here and forget. Noxious weed, they collect the personal property taxes, public health, your health departments, roads and bridges, solid waste. So there's so many things. A few extra things would be like your cemetery, ambulance, library, hospital, and city services. That's a little extra mill levy on your property taxes, as you see. But the county has 18 of them that they're responsible for too. So whenever we say we're gonna shut it down to just 3%, they're like, oh no, what if we have a major catastrophe? What if a bridge goes out? What are we gonna do if we're limited and we can't? So trying to take both of those things into consideration is a big deal. And we know we don't want to have increasing property taxes. Mine are terrible. I will just tell you, Salina's not good, but Ottawa County's is double. So if you have a $100,000 house in Bennington, you're gonna pay $2,000 where you'd pay $1,000 here. Those are just numbers I made up. But what I'm saying is, the more rural you are, the smaller you are, the more roads you have to take care of, the more it costs. And so that's one of those things where property tax, I think you've talked about most of the stuff with education that we did. You talked about cell phones. Another thing that we worked on really diligently was helping our teachers. And it passed through the House, but it did in the Senate because it kind of came to us last minute. But there is a place that does testing. You know how the kids take testing every year and they don't get the results back? They take it like in the spring, late spring, right before school's out, and they don't get the results back until they're in the next grade. And time, okay. Anyways, what they were gonna do was take that and fix it so they're having, like if there's 4 subjects, they're gonna be tested every quarter on that, and the results would come back in like within 3 or 4 days. That way the teacher can work to help them make that better. So we're gonna work on that again this next year.
Thank you, Representative.
Yes, sorry.
Senator Hill, I hope I've given you enough time to catch your breath as you came in.
Yeah, I need to talk really fast, so I was kind of wound up getting here, and if you would believe that I got down the street that there was a tree across, and that's why I was late. It wasn't true, but you might believe that. I'm gonna stand up because usually I spill something on my tie, and I want you all to know that I haven't spilled anything on my tie yet today. So Lynette would be proud if she was here. Thank you, Clark. You know, they've done a great job of covering the pace and everything of the legislature this last year. I want to talk about something real quick. We all of us up here call ourselves conservatives, and we say that a lot, and we don't always tell what that really means. And if you're a conservative, it means that you want to conserve the important things that have come before you. And so if in this 250th year, we look at what our country has done for 250 years, you look at the foundation of what our country is, and we want to conserve those important things about it. And those biblical principles that our country was founded on. And you know, it's been a pleasure to serve in the Kansas legislature. I served in the House for 3 years. I'm now in the Senate. It is a great honor to represent the 24th District, which includes all of Saline County and all of Dickinson County. And you know, I think people have talked about the storm, and I won't belabor that. I wrote my column on it this week. If you get my column, you're going to get a whole column on it. If you don't get my column and want it, give me your email address and I'll get it to you. But the one thing that hasn't maybe been talked about as much as I think should be is how people helped each other out. And as I was around Salina and calling people and talking to people, they're like, no, I already got somebody, my neighbor came over with a chainsaw, or, you know, somebody brought me food. And everything that happened this last week was what's really, really good about Kansas. You know, that we care about each other, that we look out for each other, and that, you know, we may have differences politically, or we may have differences in other things that we believe, but when we get into a difficult time, we put those aside and we say, how can I help you? You're my neighbor. And we need to remember that, and we need to remember the things that bring us together rather than tearing us apart. I served this last year on 3 committees: education, judiciary, and financial institutions and insurance, FI&I we call it. I'll briefly talk on just a couple of those things. In insurance, we spend a lot of time trying to find ways to bring down the cost of insurance because it keeps skyrocketing all the time. Those of you that have property insurance or car insurance or health insurance or whatever insurance you got, it just keeps going up. And so we try to find ways to attack some of that. We passed several bills. They're usually little things, you know. It isn't like, oh, all of a sudden your health insurance is going to be half, you know, or your car insurance is going to be half. It's little things that we try to keep the cost down, keep the coverage up. Judicial, already been talked about some of the tough on crime things we did. We did a lot of them. And we closed a lot of loopholes. We closed loopholes that criminals were exploiting. And then I want to touch briefly on education. Cell phone bill's already been mentioned. I worked 3 years on that bill. We finally got it passed last year. And as soon as we got that bill passed, I introduced one to reduce screen time in schools. And we think the State Board of Education has actually learned something, that when the legislature starts to talk about it, you better do something. And if they don't do something, we're going to, as a legislature, reduce the amount of time that kids are on screens. It's causing mental health issues, it's causing behavioral issues, and it's certainly causing academic issues. And so we need to reduce the amount of time. I'll close off with that. I see I got 30 seconds left. I can probably close in 30 seconds, but thank you, grannies, each and every one of you. Thank you for everybody that shows up. This is a fantastic crowd to be here tonight. I appreciate your support and look forward to continuing to work with you.